and Michelle Perez Macias. That ends the roll call.
Thank
Do I
you.
call the staff members? No?
I don't know if we need to do that
she
for
said
minutes
no.
purposes. I don't think we need to. You're the one who wants to get out of here, Greta, so, you know.
They're all here.
The prior minutes have been distributed to all ahead of the meeting, and I would entertain a motion to approve, and then after that motion is made, I'll ask for any modifications to the minutes.
I'm Steve Shemp.
Mr. Nathan,
I approve the minutes.
he says I'm Steve.
What you said to say.
Second.
Jim Nathan and Joe Caddy were first and second in line. That was a motion to approve. Are there any comments with regard to the minutes that were published? Not hearing any, I would call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I think it was unanimous. One comment, I've requested of Dr. Desamours that minutes in the future be distributed to us within a couple, 3 weeks of the meeting. I found myself, I was not at the last meeting, but when I read a set of minutes 3 months after a meeting,
Yes.
I'm not in a position to amend, give any input, or help the accuracy of those minutes. And if we could get them within a couple, 3 weeks, it would be helpful, I believe, in terms of having the board member input. So, public comment, I would open, I believe we have one person at least, and if not more, for public comment. And would you please state your name loudly and come up to a microphone?
I'm going to change, I'm going to turn it right here, I'm just going to slide. No problem. Good evening, ISO committee members, and thank you for your service to the community. I have researched your meeting process and have made every effort to respect your 3-minute time limit. Please do not let my speediness lessen the importance of this content. My name is Jill Moreland. My 2 sons currently attend Riverdale High School, where I'm the IB treasurer, assistant swim coach, and I run the football concession booth with my swimmers during home games. I am in the school and around the students on a regular basis and have volunteered hundreds of hours with Riverdale over the last 3 years. As much as I adore this school, it is very apparent that Riverdale has been severely neglected and lost in the prioritization of capital funds, especially when compared to other Lee County high schools. Some examples of this are, Riverdale has been the largest high school and it is the 4th oldest. It was built in 1972 to house 1,600 students, and the current capacity of over 2,300 students is almost 150% of that. This is an inside school with interior hallways that were built to handle 1,600 students, so when the bell rings, the hallways begin to fill. As much as I am continually impressed with how the staff handles the class change chaos, I know it is unsafe. Riverdale has received no maintenance dollars in year 1 or year 2 of the Change for Change project. No long-term capacity additions have ever been completed or are even listed on the Lee County School District capital plan for the next 5 years for Riverdale. For the last 5 years, Riverdale has used 12 portables as full-time classrooms, and 5 full-time teachers still do not have classrooms or portables of their own. Update to this, now 6 teachers. My son's AP US history teacher recently informed them their classroom is now closed for at least 10 weeks due to air quality issues. The chemistry classroom is also the lab and is original to the building, built in 1972. Gas does not work, so the teacher must buy butane or go without. There is only one working sink with cold water, so hot water isn't even an option. There are 12 lab spaces included in the single room, but this does little for the 30-plus students and the teacher. Riverdale does not have the accommodations to offer any AP science classes. Riverdale offers a substantially lower amount of total AP classes when compared to other schools due to lack of resources and space. This is a disservice to Riverdale students. Slide. Current 5-year sales tax surcharge budget does not list Riverdale for any major funding. Slide. The new Gateway High School looks to be amazing, but will not alleviate Riverdale's overcrowded population. Based on current numbers, East Zone schools average 35% more students per school than South Zone schools. Riverdale is currently the only non-Title I school in the East Zone, which directly affects our funding. I believe this data supports the urgency that a sizable portion of the sales tax dollars need to be allocated to Riverdale over the next 5 years to include, slide, a 500 capacity 2-story addition like Lee High's to create classrooms and labs comparable to other high schools and remove the portables from campus, an 1,800 capacity gym addition like the new Gateway gym that can support a student population percentage comparable to other area high schools, a parking garage to alleviate foot traffic on Buckingham Road and unsafe parking conditions, 2 multi-use athletic field houses on the football and baseball fields to provide needed facilities that meet current code. The current football booth does not meet code and is grandfathered in, so no major repairs can be done. At the last Riverdale versus Lehigh football game, we had more police officers on stadium property than toilets. Myself, along with the Riverdale taxpaying community, is willing to be a part of this much-needed solution for our children's safety and growth. Please let us know the best way to proceed and what those next steps include. Thank you. I know my 3 minutes are up because I timed that speech, but I am a mechanical engineer. I have looked at the plans for the Gateway School and the Lehigh School. This is a 2-scale drawing. We can make this happen at Riverdale, where we can build these additions. It's needed. I mean, it's unsafe. The school is getting by. The teachers are doing everything that they can, but it is an accident waiting to happen. And I am there day in and day out, and I see it, and I love it, and I want it to have the help. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you for your comments. I would point out that this committee does not have the ability to move projects in and out of the pot of expenditure money that's at hand. The board has the ability to do that, and they typically would do that upon recommendation from the administration, if I understand things correctly. I believe that the best this committee could do for you, given your report, is to request that your comments be transcribed if they're not already fully in writing, and that be forwarded to the administration for consideration as to how to treat it. And you're in the right spot to start the process, perhaps, but we are not in a position to do anything about that.
I have, but
I'm sorry if that doesn't satisfy you, but
I
that's the-
do have some concerns, though, because the school has been here for 50 years, and these improvements have not been made. And I got excited when I started doing the research, and I remembered that I voted for this sales tax money. And to my understanding, this is exactly what it's for.
yes, and if I can help, you were talking about taking the comments back to the administration. With your comments, and I have your copy here, and we've also saved a copy of the slides that you have. And what I can commit to do is take this information back to our capital committee, which is basically where the process for our projects start, so that we can take this information, put it under consideration, and determine if and how we would move forward with anything. So I can commit that we'll do that as part of our process, as Mr. Schimpf was referring to.
Okay.
I think it would be appropriate for this committee to receive your report officially, and I'd entertain a motion that we have received your report, and that we have forwarded it to the administration to be started into the right part of the process in order to give it serious consideration.
Okay. Would you like me to electronically forward it to you?
I'd look for one of these people to come up with that motion. It's probably going to be Joe Caddy, we all, but I think that's the best we can do for you this evening, and it may very well help move things forward.
Okay.
And one more comment for you, was Ms. Moreland, correct? I do want to let you know that as part of our process for upcoming budget for next year, and in building the next 5-year capital plan, some remodel and renovation of Riverdale was already in the evaluatory process as part of one of the requests in our capital improvement projects process.
Okay.
So,
It wasn't listed under the larger funding project?
well, and when I say that, that means it's in the evaluatory process. That does not mean it has been approved or funded, but it's one of the things that we know we must take into consideration. So I just wanted to make you aware of that as well.
I appreciate that, and I made that off of information that was publicly available.
Correct. So and this is relatively new, so you would not have known that, so I just wanted to give you that piece of information. Yes.
I appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you at next month's meeting.
Someone on the committee like to make a motion?
Steve, I'd like to move what you said earlier with just one additional thing, feedback back to this committee.
Exactly.
All right. Jim, Nathan, and Fred has made the second that it would move forward into the administration, as I indicated, and that administration would report back to us in the future as to the result of that being referred.
I agree.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in the public wish to make comment? Oh, Jim, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Put a time frame that we would, get something back?
Oh, I think we have to, I don't know how rapidly something like that gets dealt with. Could there be a time frame, Amy? Is that a possible thing to do?
Well, we certainly would have a time frame from when we would be presenting our next 5-year capital plan, which would be in July of 2020.
So it could be after the conclusion of next year's capital plan before we would know whether there has been anything done in that capital plan.
That's right.
Would that be by September or by December of next year?
It would be, by July of next year, we would have of July of 2020, we would have our next year's 5-year capital plan built.
So we could expect some feedback to this committee as to what was done by July 2020.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
And also, I think we have the superintendent of schools here, Dr. Atkins, who I believe also wants to address this as well.
Are there any other comments from the committee? Question? Dr. Atkins?
Yeah, one of the other things I want to make the committee aware of is we've started a new process, a CIP process, which is the capital improvement plan process that gives schools individually the opportunity to submit requests for modifications, renovations, or just existing maintenance issues that they feel they need addressed as a part of the capital improvement plan. Kathy Ebal, who's the Executive Director of Facilities, actually brought this here from Sarasota County. It's something that, and honestly, as we were vetting candidates for that position, one of the things that impressed me about Ms. Ebal was the comprehensiveness of the CIP process in Sarasota County. If you're used to our budget manual that we produce annually, Dr. Desamores is responsible for. That is an award-winning document, wins awards every single year for best budgetary presentation of a school district. This document that Ms. Ebal shared is something very similar. So this gives an opportunity for schools to submit. They're vetted through the capital committee, and then the projects are prioritized, and then that is produced as well. So this is something that's a little bit, it's in alignment with our capital, 5-year capital plan, but it's something that we update every single year. We're in the process of formulating that now, and the expectation is that she should have really a pretty good draft of that in March, and we can certainly report those results back to this committee as well. That also includes some of there is work that's been submitted relative to Riverdale High School that is really, I think you'll be interested in based on what you just heard this evening.
Thank you.
All righty, thanks.
Is there any other public comment? I believe the next thing on the agenda is our project reviews, and Dr. Desamores, if you would take the lead on that, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. Each of you have a packet in front of you, and we did want to get some feedback from you all in terms of
Mr. Chair, you have a motion on the floor.
I don't think the packets have been passed out yet.
Mr. Chair, you have a motion on the floor.
Oh, thank you very much. We had a motion on the floor to move that to the administration and report back by July of next year. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. Appreciate the reminder. Now, Dr. Desamores, you're on.
Very good. Yes, so each of you have, should be the packets that are in front of each name tag that have all of the project reviews or the project updates that we'll be going through this evening. We did want a little feedback from you. We emailed this information out beforehand. Now, there are some new handouts in there from what you had been emailed, but we did also print the paper copies as well. So if you all just kind of give us a little bit of feedback towards the end of the meeting about whether you prefer just to go with the electronic copies that we send, or whether you like having the paper here when you get here, we will proceed as the committee would like. So we have several project reports to go through related to construction, maintenance, technology, and safety within each of those categories. So I'm going to start with our technology project update. Mr. Alton is here to share some details related to technology project updates with all of us.
this, huh?
All right, good evening. So, I would like to remind everybody that as we look through the technology projects, you'll notice that there are a lot of security projects not listed there specifically.
And I'm sorry,
Sorry,
Mr. Alton, let me just make sure I'm pointing them to the right handout. The one that you should be referring to at the top says Infrastructure Services Sales Tax Projects. There are 6 pages to it, so at the bottom you'll see pages 1 of 6.
Looks like this.
All right, did you find it?
Just want to make sure I had referred everyone to the right one, absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you.
so as,
It has a gray section on midway first page.
okay. So you'll notice that we just list generically security technology upgrades. We don't specifically say which security technologies were upgraded at each site. We do that obviously to maintain operational security. We don't get very, very specific. But the FY19, these are the projects we talked about back in June, and we wrapped up the 19 projects in the summer. And if you move on to the next page, you'll notice that there are actually quite a few projects. And if you recall the last meeting, I discussed that several of our projects had, over the summer, moved from being funded from sales tax to, from sales tax to grant funds.
Ms. Campbell, come on.
Greta, you're just lucky we're not paying you to be the recording secretary. Hey, keep going, please.
Okay, sorry. So if you recall, we were awarded some security grants last year and earlier this fiscal year, and we moved a lot of our projects over to those security grants. So just like during the summer, it looks like we didn't have a lot of action going on specifically with our sales tax funds in the security technology areas, and that's because we use the grant funds first, and then we move into the referendum funds, and then, of course, into district capital. So you'll see that we do have quite a few projects in the sales tax area that are underway and to be completed the remainder of this fiscal year for security technologies. And of course, when we talk security technologies, we've talked categories before: surveillance, access control, alarm systems, things like that. But we have 53 ongoing and upcoming projects in the security technologies area. We also have interactive AV upgrades. And to give you an idea what that looks like is we are transitioning from smart boards in the classrooms to interactive panels. So we are working through, as you can see, we have 14 schools slated this year remaining, and we will continue that with actually a much larger group of schools the following year. We also, one of the projects we had was to increase the density, the device density at elementary. So I believe we previously discussed that in our secondary levels, grades 6 through 12, we have a one-to-one program where students all have an individual device, but we still use a shared environment in elementary school. They're not assigned one-to-one devices, and they don't take them home. One of the things that we were looking to do is increase the device density so that they can be integrated into more activities into elementary schools than we previously had been able to fund through just district capital. So you'll notice that 49 of the schools we have already encumbered the funds for 49 of the schools for new equipment that will be delivered. And we call that 50% complete because the product's ordered and in production but has not been delivered yet. And we do expect that those deliveries after the winter break. Now below that you'll see that we have, again, the safety and security. I just put one line in there for the details of which schools, but you can also look at the which schools are receiving the Chromebooks and the interactive displays, and so that'll sort of give you an idea of the sales tax projects, which schools we're working with over the next 6 months. Any questions?
Questions from the committee?
Yes, please. Can you crosswalk us all these student Chromebooks to where it exists on the budget?
Sure.
Because it does have a line for increased
Get one of the-
computer density, but no expenditures.
They're not expended yet, they're encumbered. So let's see if we have encumbrances
So-
on that.
Yes, we do have, so in the budget, you will have, down at the
2711.
bottom where you see the budgeted technology improvements, and I'm looking at just the annual budget. Budgeted technology improvements, we have the categories for increased elementary computer density, school technology, and modernized interactive AV systems. So any of the technology projects that Mr. Alton refers to would be budgeted, and expenditures would show in this category in the bottom of budgeted technology improvements. Did I answer your question on that?
So that's in the modernized interactive AV systems is the Chromebooks.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in the computer density.
Correct, because the elementary computer density is upcoming projects that he's speaking of, and we've just kind of moved budgets and just transferred those budgets and set them up in sales tax. So these reports, as you see at the top, which we hadn't gotten to the financial reporting yet, but you'll see it is very specific. At the top, it says as of 12/11/2019. So any activity that would have happened after 12/11/2019, of which our elementary computer density is one of them, you will see that show up on the next report.
Right, and I can tell you off the top of my head, it's around $2 million that we just encumbered for the elementary Chromebooks.
So it's not,
Question,
so it's not budgeted on the budget? I mean, I'm just looking at the increased elementary computer density has no budget for the next 3 years. So is it going to be budgeted?
It would only be budgeted, well, it'll be budgeted for this year and
Yes.
for,
Yes,
Four
it
years
is.
from
You
now.
will see those, you'll see those budgeted amounts show up on the next quarterly report, because that was a project now that had just been decided to move into our sales tax project, so you will see those.
Okay. Okay. It just moved in the last 8 days?
the money did, yes. Yeah, we just moved and encumbered the funds.
Okay.
Yes.
Goal was to get the orders out before winter break.
And I think, so to recap what he was saying, we did not have an original budget for increased elementary computer density there. Once we received the grant from the state for security projects, we were able to redistribute, utilize those grant monies from the state for security projects, and determine that we could include increased elementary density technology into the sales tax plan. And so that determination and the movements for those has just happened within the past week.
Thank you.
any other questions? I have a general question. As the head of all the technology expenditures that are happening, are you finding that you're accomplishing everything that was set out to the taxpayers to be done with these funds, or more or less?
Well, we're finding that we had not anticipated all of the grant money we did receive. So honestly, we've spent less than we had anticipated out of our sales tax revenue for those particular projects. As far as the work schedule, yes, the work schedule is actually, I would say, accelerated. In other words, we have added more to the work schedule than we originally anticipated completing, and we're on schedule with that accelerated implementation.
I heard that you're accomplishing more than what had been indicated at the time of the referendum.
Correct.
Thank you. Dr. Nesmore's next report, please.
Yes, and, yeah, if there are no other questions for technology, then we'll move into the construction and maintenance updates. And so we have today Ms. Kathy Ebal that is here to give details about each of the projects that are going on within construction and maintenance. So I refer you to first your handout that at the top says referendum project details for construction. And then she'll move into the last handout, the referenda project summary, 12 pages that details all of our maintenance projects. Eba.
Good evening. I'm just going to quickly, yes, that's the right one. I quickly summarize, and then if you have any further questions, I will entertain details. But so I'm going to focus just on the front page. We had, for this year, we had 30 construction projects, including the start of the Gateway School, the middle school, both in Lehigh. 5 portables, covered walkways, 6 traffic studies, 5 HVAC projects, and the staging of portables for the new Gateway High School at Lehigh Senior. Of those, 2 of we're in the progress of all of the projects. None have yet been completed. Some of them are long-term. These are construction projects, so these are long-term projects. Clearly, Gateway High School, Middle School will not be completed this year. These are large capital investments and large capital projects, so they take longer than the smaller ones do. Any specific questions? If you're out by Gateway High School in the next couple of weeks, I encourage you to get a chance to drive by the campus if you can, because you will see walls going vertical, which is pretty cool.
A question in the construction area, are you, like the Gateway High School is being completed within the allocation of dollars that was set aside for it originally here within the sales tax revenues?
I will defer that question to Ms. Desmore.
Could you repeat your question?
Is it projected that the Gateway High School will be completed under budget, over budget, or how does it run relative to the projections that were voted on, presented in the budget breakdown when the sales tax revenue was voted in?
I understand. So at this point, it appears that the project will be on budget. It is a little early. The walls just went vertical, so it's a little early to say whether that project would be under budget or not. We certainly don't anticipate that it's going to be over. So I don't have enough information to tell you, yes, we anticipate it will be under budget. So I have to say it's on budget at this point.
And the others appear like you're in the starting stages of them, and it's a little early to have answers on those. Is that correct?
That's correct. The Middle School, we are finalizing the budget right now, and we'll be bringing that to the board in the next couple of meetings.
Good. So bells are not going off of alarm, and no horns are ringing for celebration, is what I'm hearing.
We're
Not
on
at this
task.
point.
All right, that's why I was wondering. Yes, Chris.
Again, I refer back to the budget spreadsheet for FY 2019-20, the budget for construction of about $5.2 million. Will these projects be covered under the budget of $5.2 million?
I don't know.
Each of these, would you refer me, are you looking at the quarterly or the annual?
I'm looking at what I believe to be the annual budget, 19-20. The middle columns have the budget starting with the sales tax collection of 83.8 million. Dropping down under the construction improvements, it's a total
Yes.
budget of 5.2 million.
Yes, that's correct. Because there is a listing here of various, and that's for this year, but then when you roll into the next year, you've got 17 million. And so, there are various projects here that are listed to take place. And remember, this is mixed in over 2 different years. At the very top, you see there's FY19 and FY20 project updates. So some of the projects that you see here would be under FY19, such as Lehigh Senior. The other ones, and I'm looking at the first page of the construction update, under FY20, would be those items that you see for FY20 budget, that would be 5.2 million. And then some of the projects that you see listed here are projects that our construction department does do, but we have them budgeted within the maintenance area. So it's kind of a combination of the two between the budgets and maintenance and construction that would cover these different project areas.
So the 30 projects listed here, the total cost out of the referendum will be about $5.2 million. The rest will be covered somewhere else.
They'll be covered in maintenance. So say, for example, as you're looking at your annual budget, then
I'm sorry.
you
yeah,
see
out of the $26 million.
correct. Some of these projects are covered in that $26 million number.
Okay.
Say, for example, the covered structures.
You're doing a lot for 5.2 million.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a combination of both, yeah.
Okay.
And so you make a good point, because we don't, we have we budget our projects within certain areas. So maintenance will do certain things within a project, and then depending on how large it is, our construction area may take it over. So the people who are doing the actual work are the ones that are reporting out on the project, where the budget may be listed somewhere different within the financials. So say, for example, the covered structures that are listed here under the construction update, you'll see them specifically listed covered structures under budgeted maintenance improvements. So between the two budgets of about $32 million, that's where you'll see all the totality of all of these projects being covered.
Thank you. Sorry, I thought it was just construction.
No, but that, we would be really good if that was the case, though.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Well, Steve, while you're still in that same neighborhood of discussion, some of these projects, I mean, I know that there's the regular capital budget for the whole school district is massively larger than this. And some of these projects draw from both buckets, correct? Is that,
So some of these categories do, yes, that is correct. Some of the categories and projects might draw from both buckets, yes.
project isn't all in this.
That's, yes.
So that makes it even more complicated for us to even be able to figure out what the heck it is we're looking at.
That, it may draw from various buckets, yes. Now, for the most part, most of the projects that we have on here do solidly land just in the sales tax area. But one of the things, as I'm listening to what you're asking and saying, that may be helpful is by each, as we have them listed here, by each one to list what the total project cost of that project is. So if we have the Ida Baker High School HVAC project listed here, it would be helpful on this same line to list what's the total project cost for that. And if it is split funded, note that it's split funded. So maybe would that be helpful in terms of?
Either the dollar amount or the percentage.
Understood. Okay, all right, we certainly can do that moving forward.
We're going to have an opportunity later on, but to offer what might be changed in the reports to help us, but I would offer up that I've had some discussion with Dr. Desmours about, particularly in this kind of report where we have multiple projects, it would be very helpful to the committee to have a one-liner that basically would say total project budget is $13 million, just as an example. As of this writing, it's anticipated that the project will be completed within, under, overrun, but give us a simple statement as to what you are projecting that project to come in. Many of these are 0% complete, and you don't have guaranteed maximum prices, and they literally are just budgets, so that the statement would likely be, you know, the original budget of $13 million appears to be holding, or we've moved that budget up or down. Absent that, I don't know how this committee could really get guidance as to how we're doing in expenditures.
Yeah.
So if you'd think about doing that, that'd be great for us. It'd be helpful.
Oh,
Yes, Joe.
noted.
I would encourage you, or, you know, for this committee, at a future meeting, you know, to take some amount of time and provide us an education on actually how, you know, you report. So, because, I mean, really, to your point, and you can look at this, and unless you're in the system, you really don't know what this is telling us. Maybe we're not supposed to know, I don't know. But
Well, and which report are you referring to? Are you referring to the project detail report or
budget.
the what?
Budget.
Okay, well, so our
I
next,
don't want to do it now.
well, our next agenda item, we're actually doing that. And so maybe once we go through the report, it would be helpful, and then you all can give us some feedback. So we did have that as a next agenda item to do that.
Any other questions? Extra, yes, Greta?
So I see that the Franklin Park Elementary rebuild has no budget through 21-22 school year. I know that we were waiting on a Gestalti report, and I don't know whether or not we received it because I missed a couple meetings. So is that why there is nothing listed for Franklin Park yet?
So first, we have not received the response from the state on the Castaldi report for Franklin Park or for Cypress Lake Middle. We've had some additional questions in the last couple of weeks from the state and hope to get an answer in the next month or so, but we do not yet have their response on the Castaldi's for Franklin Park and Cypress Lakes. And so for that reason, neither one of those have gone to a budget yet, because neither one of them have yet even gone into plan design yet. We don't know what we can build there yet. We don't know what we can demolish there yet. And until we do that, we can't enter into a design phase, which is what will help us establish a budget for those two projects. So until that time, which is at least a year, year and a half out, we won't have a firm budget. We know these are projects we're looking to complete, but we have to go through the process with the state to move forward with the planning of it.
Ms. Ebal, you were talking earlier about a projected date from hearing from the state on the Castaldi report for Franklin Park. Did you want to speak to a timeline?
Yeah, that's in the next month or so, is when we expect to have some sort of answer, but we had hoped to have it before Christmas. We're at Christmas. We just got recent questions for both of those two projects, so, you know, I've known these to take a while, and especially now. What we were hoping for before Christmas that we would get before the legislative cycle. We are not before the legislative cycle, so we could significantly slow down right now. It could be spring before we have an answer, just because now the staff's attention is drawn away from the everyday work to the legislative cycle work. So we really don't. We had hoped for Christmas. We didn't get Christmas, and now because the legislative cycle this year is earlier than normal, it could be after legislative cycle.
For those on the committee who are not familiar with construction terms, a Castaldi report, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we have to submit as a district to the state before we can demolish an existing school facility in order to replace it.
That's right.
They evaluate the structure. Is it ready to be demolished and replaced? Without Castaldi approval, the district cannot proceed on the project. Is that fair to describe it?
Yeah, the Castaldi is, and it's a name, just for curiosity, it's a name of a gentleman, it's not an acronym. And what it does is evaluates the cost of maintenance of those facilities versus the cost of rebuild and construction. It also takes into account, especially on the Franklin Park campus where you have 3 new buildings, the cost of safety and security of those campuses, how well you can integrate new facilities into the existing facilities. So it's evaluating a number of critical issues, but we first submitted our Castaldi back in late spring. We resubmitted it in early summer. The state came and visited us in September. We resubmitted further questions in October. We resubmitted questions again in November and December. We have been given notice that the staff level has completed their review and has gone on to administration, but as I said, that we've now gotten caught into the legislative cycle, so how quickly it will be acted on at the administrative level is anyone's guess.
Questions in the construction area? Dr. Desmore, the next report, please.
The next report is in the maintenance area, also given by Ms. Ebal.
So once again, I'm just going to be quick on the summary, and then if you have further questions. In the maintenance area, these are smaller projects, so these get done at a faster turnaround. We have 37 total projects scheduled for this year. To date, we've completed 35 of them. We have 2 outstanding. One is a fire sprinkler project, and one's a window upgrade. But all of the other fire alarm, fire sprinklers, lighting, roofing, security, emergency lighting, single-point entry projects, air conditioning, PA, clock, and window upgrades have been completed.
Any questions? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd point out to the committee, the smaller projects like this are done in existing schools during the summertime, so that they jam into that July through September timeframe, or June, July, August timeframe pretty tightly. That's why we see so many completed relative to the number of total.
Not always. Some of them do get done throughout the school year. We do try to do as many as we can during the summer. We'll be doing another big push for projects in the next 2 weeks while the school is closed, and then again at spring break. But there are projects that that go all year. We try to schedule projects that can be done with students during the times when schools are open, and then projects that need to be done during off-campus times during the summertime and the other times that the school is closed for session. So it really depends on the type of project and the interaction between the classroom and the students and the project, of whether or not the project is being scheduled during a school day or during a time the school is closed.
Any other questions? Next area of report, Dr. Desamore.
That concludes our project detail report.
Okay, so I think we need to get into the financial review as the next item on the agenda. Number 5 on your agenda. And that's Dr. Desamore's again.
Thank you. I have up here with me Ms. Sarah Cox, and the two of us will go through our financial review together. The first handout I wanted to refer you to is the one that you see up on the screen that breaks down our monthly sales tax collections. And at the top, you'll see it'll say monthly sales tax collections. It has some bar graphs from...
Dr. Desamore, I hate to interrupt, but we're seeing ourselves on the screen down here.
You are seeing yourselves on the screen.
Perfect. That's a much improvement. We don't look that good.
Okay.
Much better.
Speak for yourself.
Is everybody then on the handout that I'm referring to is the ones that are up here on the screens. On the top, it says monthly sales tax collections. Everybody with me on that? Yes. Mm-hmm. And so here, we okay? Any questions related to the handout?
I got it.
Okay. What we have listed here is the actual sales tax collections that we've received each month. From January through December are the actual months that we have collected the sales tax on. As you know, we do collect those sales taxes a couple of months behind. So as you see and look at the graph, you'll notice that the first column says month earned, and then the second column says date received. So those sales tax collections from January, the school district actually did not receive until March. Okay, so the latest sales tax that we have received as of the time of this printing, which again was, I believe, December 11, we had received our collections from the month of September, and we had received those in November of 2019. So during a fiscal year 2019, which was those months of January through June, we received a total collection of $36,453,161. If everybody notes those totals under FY19. And then under FY20, or this fiscal year so far, we have received an additional $23,741,118 for a total collection on the year since the inception of the sales tax of $60,194,279.17. And that was as of December 11th. So we wanted to give that update to make sure that we were reflecting those numbers. Does anybody have any questions related to that information?
Dr. Desamore, I think we should share, is this in line with what we projected so far budget-wise, and do we anticipate getting revenues that are consistent with our budgets?
Yes, so we do within about a $3 million margin. We've got a lot of detail related to that Ms. Cox was going to share with us after we got through the financials, but the short answer to that story is yes, but we had an $83.8 million budget estimate for revenue for this fiscal year, and we believe at this point our estimates will be within $3 million of that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So the next handout that I will take you to, it's a little something like this on the screen. At the top, it'll have 4 nice bar graphs on there, and at the top, it says FY20 sales tax budget activity as of 12/11/2019. And that basically is just another kind of graphical description or just a picture of what things look like at this point in terms of the 4 major categories that we are expending our sales tax in: construction, safety, maintenance, and technology. The dark blue denotes what the expenses have been so far. So those expenses are what you see noted within our financials. Then the gray color is related to the encumbrances that are out there. So whereas our financial statements don't necessarily reflect encumbrances, or that is money that has been tied up in a purchase order but we've not yet paid an invoice for, that's that money. And then the lighter blue is the available budgets still left in those categories. And as I think all of our project detail people came up as they detailed, we have many projects coming up that will be encumbered and expended on throughout the rest of the year in terms of our larger construction type projects. And then also a major safety project that's underway beginning very shortly. So any questions related to that representation?
Quick question.
Sir?
So on the new construction that you're building from the sales tax budget, where do you express the future maintenance relating to those construction projects?
So the future maintenance related to all of our buildings is kind of reflected within our total capital plan. So it may not necessarily be reflected in the sales tax plan, because some of our newer facilities would have maintenance that would be going a little farther out, and we're trying to address our older facilities and those deferred maintenances within sales tax. But maintenance related to all of our buildings, and we call it rotational maintenance, that those things that have to be done to maintain each of our buildings are reflected within our total capital plan, usually funded from a different funding source, most likely our property tax funds.
So when the sales tax sunsets and there's no longer resources to go towards the maintenance of the building that you've done in this process, is that going to be captured in your other maintenance budgets?
Yes.
Is that the plan?
Yes, that is the plan. It would be captured within our the district's entire capital plan, funded through property tax revenues, which is the major source of funding within the capital plan at this point, other than the sales tax.
Other questions? I think in the past, it's been our practice at the meeting to approve the financial report that was just given on a quarter-by-quarterly basis, and I'd entertain a motion to approve Dr. Desamore's report that she just gave.
Are we done with, the financial report?
I'd open for more questions if you have them. Go ahead.
Well, before, there are a couple more handouts, those budget to actuals that Mr. Caddy was asking about earlier on the quarterly basis and the annual basis. So I can go through those very quickly before you take your motion. So last 2 handouts, so at the top, it says sales tax budget to actuals. And I'm actually looking at the annual report at this point. So it is broken out into the 4 columns, first with 2018-19, and then moving into 2019-20, and then 2 additional years. So basically, as an overview of that, this report is meant to show our annual budget and sales tax, what revenue we've collected in the year so far, and then in what categories expenditures have been made within the year to date. So looking at the 3rd column on the sheet, which is really our current fiscal year, 2019-20, you'll see that, and I'll pull this up on the screen so you all could see this up here as well. Okay. This report here on the screen is what I'm referring to, and this 2019-20 column is where we are. So you'll see total revenue so far in 2020 or fiscal year 2020 that have been collected. Again, the $23,741,118, the same number that you saw on the first sheet that we went through. So you'll see those numbers matching up. And then within the expenditures that you see on this sheet, now you can kind of, as Mr. Semino was referring to before, match up the expenditures of all of the project details that each of our subject matter experts went through. You can see the expenditures that are related to each of those different categories on this annual financial report. So far in this year, in our budgeted construction improvements, $2.2 million expended, that $2,201,801. Within budgeted safety improvements, $1,583,874, so on and so forth. So total expenditures so far in this fiscal year, $9,493,296. Then taking that information and rolling into our last handout, which is the quarterly budget handout. And the quarterly handout is the one that you all have said, this is the breakout that we want to see by quarter and be able to approve those for each of the quarters. So looking at the handout, we have 4 quarters in total on here. We show you the previous 2 quarters, which is quarter 3 and quarter 4 of our fiscal year 19. And then we show you our most current 2 quarters in quarter 1 and quarter 2 of fiscal year 20. So bottom line in terms of our expenditures for the quarters for fiscal year 20, in quarter 1, the $5,289,514 at the very bottom of the page, and then in quarter 2, $4,203,912. Those 2 numbers for quarter 1 and quarter 2 add up to the total expenditures that we show so far on our annual report of the $9,493,000 that we just reported. So that quarterly report was the one that you all had specifically asked. You wanted to see that breakdown of expenditure in each category by quarter, which hopefully, Mr. Caddy, I'm not sure if that's answering the question that you had earlier or whether there is something different that you want to ask or maybe a different presentation that you were looking for.
That covers, what month does the fiscal year end?
Our fiscal year end is June 30th. Yes.
You have a lot of money to spend in 6 months.
We do now, and we don't necessarily anticipate that we will spend all of that because some of the projects are larger projects and we don't anticipate that they're going to be necessarily complete by the end of the fiscal year for many of our larger construction projects. So
Will carry forward.
they will carry forward, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Chris?
I have 2 questions. On the annual sheet, you referenced that you had some savings off of the safety and that you were redeploying about $2 million into technology, including the computer density. So the next time, will you reallocate the budgeted monies from our safety line to our technology line?
So I believe you are asking, so far, and I'm looking, you said you were looking at the annual. I just want to restate the question so I am sure of what you're asking. So in budgeted safety improvements for the FY20 budget, we see $20,309,119. Your question is, the next reporting that comes, will you see that number reduce and see our technology budget increase because of the reallocations that we are doing?
Yes, that's my question.
Potentially, you will definitely see the technology number go up. You may see the safety number move up, down, depending on what other projects may move in or out of that category.
But net, just for the computers, you will move the budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. If that was the only thing that happened, the answer to your question would be yes, but there could be multiple things that happen.
Second question. On the
I'm sorry, hold on. Sarah wanted to add something to that
Yes,
first question.
I just wanted to clarify, so the computer density is in the budget. It just didn't post, the journal did not post until after we ran these numbers. So if you go out to the dashboard, you will see that $2 million for the elementary density out there.
You posted both the budget change and the expense?
Not the expense, the encumbrance.
Yes.
Correct.
What he's saying on this recording.
Clarify one thing, so.
Please, go, Mr. Alton, please.
So you definitely will see the money show up in the technology projects, but we do anticipate that we do have the desire to accelerate some of our safety projects because the revenue, the revenue has been above, our conservative projections. So you'll likely see that increase if we can accelerate some of those safety projects as well. We're trying to get them done as quickly as possible. So if we can move things from, say, a 3-year schedule to a 2.5-year schedule, we're trying to do that.
I don't think it's in our purview as to where they spend the money inside of this, correct?
It is,
Because it's in these
it's
categories.
within our purview as to whether when funds are used from the sales tax, that they have been spent within the categories that the sales tax was presented to be spent for. It is not within our purview to receive and process and approve specific projects coming in or out. We're here to, our primary goal is to represent to the taxpayer, assuming that we can, that in fact the funds have been spent in accordance with the referendum that was passed.
You said you had a second question.
Yes, please. On the quarterly top line, your first quarter budget for sales tax collection is $83.8 million, but in the second quarter, you moved that budget to $72 million. Is there a projection that we're going to receive $10 or $11 million less in sales tax?
Well, no. This is just a presentation of that because the budget that you see in quarter one, the 83.8 million, is really the whole entire, it's the annual budget, it's the complete revenue that we expect we're going to get through sales tax. The second quarter, what the budget reflects is, okay, we had a budget of 83.8 million. We received in quarter one 11.2, so we reduced that budget by 11.3 to say, okay, now remaining collected for the budget is the 72,566. So we were trying to, figure out what was the best way to kind of reflect that quarterly budget, knowing that we don't really break our annual budget down quarterly like this. So that was the way that we kind of chose to present it in terms of, okay, we received 11.3, so we backed that out of the total budget to go into quarter two. Here's the remaining budget left to collect. So that's kind of how it made sense to us. If you feel like you have an issue with that depiction, we're open to suggestions on that.
It was confusing enough to me that I asked the question, so
I think it would be helpful if you would call in the second quarter and then third and fourth quarter, call it remaining budget.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because then that would reflect that that's what's remaining to be collected from
Right.
the initial.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then that third column under the quarter actuals, I probably would call that something different because it looks like what that is a remaining budget to be collected.
Okay, so,
It looks like you go from the annual budget to what we collected to the remaining for quarter one. The remaining for quarter one becomes the beginning for quarter two, then actuals, and then whatever we choose to call, whatever that.
that last column, I see. Okay, all right, we can definitely work on that.
Would you like a motion to accept the financial report?
I would.
So moved.
Second.
That-
Yes, that General Dozier is second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Steve?
Next on our,
Mr. Nathan.
Steve?
yes, excuse me.
I don't have a question on the motion, but this may still be an elementary question on this committee. I understand the categories are what was in the referendum. I understand the referendum was to be an enhancement because as a community we were falling behind. We had a great example of the Riverdale. I understand that our purview is not the allocation from the capital committee of the board and the board's role, et cetera. But where I have a disconnect is that there are projects that fit these categories that are also being done through the capital budget of the overall school district. Where I have a disconnect is how these specific projects fit here versus similar projects that don't come here and how these get selected, et cetera. And I don't need to do that tonight, but If I'm the only one, then that's okay, but I see some heads nodding. That would be helpful to me, because I think also, in fairness to the lady who spoke earlier, I mean, she spoke passionately and legitimately on behalf of her school. I assume there's some other schools, too, that are way behind in all of this. That's really, as we already identified, not our role, but understanding the handoff and the correlation to the bigger picture would be helpful to me.
So we can take that as a follow-up and put it on the agenda for our next meeting to kind of talk through that process, if that's what you all would like to do.
I don't want to speak for the group, but that'd be helpful for me.
Would be, no question. That's why I keep striving to get answers to the basic questions. Are the revenues on the sales tax coming in as anticipated? And are the projects that are brought to us to be reported upon coming in within the budgets that they were set out to do? And I think for purposes of our committee, those are very relevant to our business, but we're all also aware that there's this other capital expenditure program running parallel to it. And it would be nice to know how we're doing that area as well. But
Yeah, and how these projects are selected out of the massive amount to be able to be put here versus another bucket. And maybe they just have to go somewhere in order to get done, and that's not necessarily a bad answer. I just would like to understand it better.
well, I think originally the project list for the referendum was established by pulling projects that were recognized to be needs within the district, that the district knew it had no funding to accomplish. And so that original framework was a group of projects that would not have happened without the sales tax.
Right.
And for our limited scope responsibility, I feel that we need to have enough information to represent that in fact we're doing those projects and within the funds that are available to us. That's why I keep asking the questions of the department heads. Any other questions?
Yeah, and I hate to be the maintenance guy, but I feel like I need to see what the buildup of maintenance dollars are as a reflection of what we're doing on this 82 million, because eventually that's gonna be a number that's gonna be huge. 20, 30 million of ongoing maintenance. You're saying you're gonna capture that in a general revenue area, but I'd like to understand how that is being accounted for and building as we progress through this. We're gonna end up spending $700 million over 10 years. That number is gonna be a big number.
Okay.
So I'd like to try to capture that somewhere. That's kind of my burr. But I'd like to see how that is adding up into consideration.
Can I add to Mr. Perlman? We just heard about a $2 million outlay for laptops, which have a 2 to 3 year lifespan. So how are we gonna fund those replacement in 3 years? Is it gonna come from the sales tax?
You may have considered that, but I'd just like to see it versus it'll get taken care of here. I may be alone on that too, but it certainly, it makes a difference to me.
The capital expenditures over time are always smaller than taking care of everything over the long haul. And I think that's where you're going, right? Is that fair?
Okay,
For your consideration for a future meeting to see how that would be accounted for.
okay, we can speak to that at future meeting as well. And then I have Ms. Sarah Cox, who's going to share some additional information related to budget estimates versus actual projections and kind of where we are, where we project ourselves to be by the end of the year. So, Ms. Cox?
Good evening. Yes, so we have been monitoring the revenue projections closely. We're downloading data from the Department of Revenue site frequently to monitor collections data specific to Lee County. So Amy had mentioned earlier that we have about a 3 or 4% or $3 million variance that we anticipate in the revenue budget, and that's due to the trends that we've been looking at, where when we originally built the budget, we were projecting 5 to 6% growth based on the trend data at that time. And as we've analyzed data coming through for 2019, it's showing that the growth is more about 1.5% in collections for Lee County. So that's where that variance anticipation is coming in. So we also consider the Office of Economic and Development Research. They produce a local government financial handbook that estimates revenue for municipalities, districts, et cetera, and it speaks specifically to the school capital outlay surtax. The report doesn't come out until after we do our projections. So for example, our 2021 projection will come out by June, and the financial handbook isn't released until like October, December timeframe, but we still like to consider that data to see if we're falling in alignment with the Economic and Demographic Research Office. And then they also publish a lot of data specific to Lee County that helps us anticipate what's coming down. So our timeline is really in March of 2020, we'll have a full year of collections. So we're anxious to see what that data looks like and see if there's any trends we can identify. What we're looking at specifically with the collections data from Department of Revenue is like the monthly fluctuations, so we can kind of say how much is going to come in per month, and then those annual fluctuations. So in June of 2020, as we get close to the preliminary 2021 budget, you may see some revised revenue projections come out of that. Do you guys have any questions, comments, suggestions on the revenue estimates?
Chris?
You mentioned a $3 million variance, but you didn't say a positive or a negative variance.
Yes, because we anticipated going either way.
You don't know. So we had a 9% reduction in FY19 collections, right?
No.
We were projecting 39, we received 36. So it was less than projection. Is that a timing issue?
Well, but also note that for the 2019 year, that was a 6-month projection, and we only collected, literally earned from DOR 5 months worth of collections.
Because they're running.
So the budget was 6 months, and what we received was 5 months worth.
So we're still projecting a positive variance, or that would correlate to a positive variance for that 6 months.
It would have,
Correct.
yes. And any other I'm sorry, did you have something else?
Nope, I was just going to ask that same thing.
Okay.
Does that conclude the,
I think we had some other, yes, that does conclude the financial review portion, yes.
you do have the sales tax dashboard review is the next item on the agenda?
Yes, so we're not going to pull up the dashboard and go through that with you guys. We've done that a few times, so unless you specifically want to do that, we're not planning to. We just kind of wanted to talk to you about data we've even been analyzing on the dashboard. You know, we promoted this tool as a tool for transparency, and we've been monitoring the page views on it. They were really high March, April time frame, and now they've really slacked off. So we were looking at, 2,000 to 3,000 page views, and now we're running at about 200 page views. So people aren't
Per month?
per month. Yes, I'm sorry, per month. People really aren't staying on it very long, so we just want to continue to promote that, ask that you guys get that information out there, and then if you guys even have any suggestions for us to continue to get people to come to that and look at what's going on in our schools.
So we had promised at the last meeting that we would look at, there was a question that came from you all as to what the views from the website had been. So we found that information and wanted to bring that back to you for an update. Yes, sir.
So along those lines, there may be a value kind of in some kind of highly visible annual report or a section annual report to keep the story alive about the value and the extent of the projects that are getting done by this, and then referring back to that dashboard. But I think you're onto something here, because the more the public is aware, at some point, you're going to be going back and asking them to keep this thing alive. So the more they hear about it and know that it's being spent wisely for things they wouldn't have seen before. And then any kind of education, I assume, to the parents, the families that are involved in the schools about the enhancements that are coming specifically out of this additional fund would be helpful.
Okay.
Marketing.
Yes.
If that concludes the dashboard review, I'd like to move into member comments. And before we get to that, I would like to handle a piece of business. We have to approve our meeting dates for the next year. We've been meeting on the last Thursday each quarter. Those dates would fall on March 26th, June 25th, September 24th, and you guessed it, very too close to Christmas, December 24th. So that the recommendation that I've received was March 26, June 25, September 24, and December 17th in lieu of the 24th. It would otherwise be that last Thursday.
Say that again, Steve, please.
I'll read them again slowly. March 26th, 3:26. June 25th, September 24th, and December 17th. Those should match up with the last Thursday of each quarter, with the exception of the December meeting that is moved to the 17th. And I'd entertain a motion to approve those dates for our next year.
So second.
I think the general was first, he beat Fred,
Right, yeah.
and Fred was second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Then I was asked to bring up two basic questions, and I think we can do this in a pretty free-for-all manner, or we could go one at a time. The first question I was asked is that the district would kind of like to know from our members our opinion as to how we're doing, how they are doing on our behalf, and giving us reporting information that is packaged just so that we feel we can do our job. And the second area came up in that, you know, to date, these meetings have been open to the public, but the district purposely, because we're very early in the process, don't even have a year under our belt. The question was, when and how should we become more, reaching out more externally, perhaps with periodic press releases coming from the committee, perhaps with a written report that's presented to the board, which is a largely reported public meeting. You know, when do we think we might want to start that process so that hopefully we would get the public more aware of what's being done on their behalf? So the first question, we might even want to go person by person. If so, I'd be willing to start on a, you know, how do I perceive we're doing in our reporting? And then the second question, perhaps we could move into. My personal opinion is that the district reports, on one hand, on a cash basis, on another, you know, on a cash basis on sales tax collected. I'm seeing I'm looking for us to get more on the track of this is what our budget is and this is what our reality is. And that's why you hear me asking questions of the department heads. Are your projects coming in under or within budget? Similarly, I've made a request just tonight, and I'm sure that'll happen, where, you know, this chart could have revenues collected and could have a bar right next to it that gave us budgeted revenues to be collected, and it would ease a lot of the pain of the committee, but still give them the information needed. That is, are we on track? I personally am looking for it to be simpler, because I feel as if I don't live with these numbers day in, day out. I see them once every 90 days, and I'd like to keep it simple, stupid, so that my talents could be used as opposed to confused. or others, you know, that's where I am.
I agree.
I think the total costs, a lot of these would be really helpful. Because we're looking at these breakdowns and then we're looking at a quarterly amount as well, it's kind of really easy to get lost in that number. So if we knew that, you know, this particular project, and if they're, you know, larger projects, we had a total cost, and then we can see what's already been spent and what we need, that may be a little easier for all of us.
Yeah, trying to report on projects, particularly those that run over time, over a period of time across the calendar and perhaps 2 fiscal years, is very, very difficult if you work within only spent, because you also have committed funds, contracts that are out there that are not funded in full, and things that have yet to be bought. So that that's a very complex subject, and I would like to see the district move to this committee doing that reporting on a very simplistic method for us. I'd like to hear, you know, we don't even have one of these, do we? School KKK or QQQ.
We will not have that school,
We
yeah.
don't have a QQQ. I'd like to see for high school QQQ, a report that says the original budget was $68 million. Current projection is that when we're 100% complete, we will be at $64 million, or current projection is that we're going to be at 72. And that come from the department head that's in charge of seeing that project brought forward. For me, that would satisfy my obligation to the taxpayer to sit on this committee and look at, are the funds being properly expended and within the categories of the referendum. If others would like to get more complex, I would tell you that you might be jumping into a huge exercise if you start to bring the other capital projects of the district in and mixing and matching. It's a hugely, it merits more than a meeting quarterly, let me put it that way. Jim?
Since I'm the one that talked about it, I do not want to get into micromanaging. I don't want to get into second guessing about the allocation. I just was really looking to try to understand how the projects got into these buckets and how much of similar kinds of buckets are in the total big capital budget, and just understanding the process a little bit better. But the last thing I want to do is drag this committee into doing something that is already going on at the school district level.
Chris?
I think we need to make sure that the sales tax revenues are additive to this district, that there is a process, but these are above and beyond. And to whatever assurances we get that this is additive. And to answer Mr. Perlman's, like, and that we'll be able to continue them into the future. Right. To your earlier point about project by project, I would say if we had a threshold, whether it's a $10 million project and above, not every project do we need to say what we budgeted versus what was expended. That's too in the detail. But if it's at a $10 million project and above, I'm fully supportive that, because that's where the major issues are going to arise for us.
Any other feedback from other members?
The only one piece I see with that is that if school X is projected to cost $72 million, and as we go on, we see that it's going to be $82 million, aren't those costs out of the control of the district? That's construction materials and those things that elevate that. So if it comes to this committee, as long as, this is my humble opinion, as long as I see, well, they had no control over that, that was construction costs, it's an appropriate use for this fund because it falls in that category.
Right. Well, coming from the construction business, I would tell you that construction costs are very, very controllable if you start paying attention early on.
Okay.
That's why I'm looking for department managers, and the same thing happens with your safety projects and those projects. If you get started early on in your department at developing a budget and then working to buy those items, you can pretty well control that or at least report accurately on it, can't you?
Yes, we can, we certainly can report accurately on it, and we have a phased approach to our budgeting for our large construction projects. So by the time that total project cost goes to the board, the guaranteed maximum price on the construction has been determined. So once we go through that process, we are very assured that the project cost will stay within that budget that has been established. Did I answer your question?
Any other comments about reports to date and what could be done?
I'd like to see more graphs rather than numbers.
More graphs rather than numbers. I guess I'm erring that way too, because I think on a quarterly basis, a graph's a lot easier to understand.
I appreciated these new reports but
They're good.
But we have 4 categories, and I would just say if we're gonna have, they should just crosswalk with the categories.
4 reports for 4 categories.
Here's our construction, here's
Okay.
our maintenance,
Yep.
here's our safety, and here's our
Good
technology.
point, Chris. Any other thoughts?
Well, the first point, with regard to the district, I think they're doing a good job.
Well, yeah, I do too. But I still recognize that we're really early on, and I think we need to strive as a committee to get
We're all on a learning curve.
a consistent reporting method that will serve this committee well for years and years. I'm out of here after 2 years. I'd like to see us have something that's a consistent format, that we're all sitting at this table and understanding what's being presented. And I know from my standpoint, I've dealt with a ton of budgets and, operating statements and capital programs and the whole thing. And I'm confused by a lot of this because of the measure of detail that we're getting in lieu of chart form, graph form, and summaries. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
As far as is that a general, can we accept that as an expression of where we are?
Yep. Okay. So we can take that back and work on more graphs for you. More graphs, less numbers. That's our motto.
The next subject was when do we want to become a little more with public outreach, and I would say that public outreach at this point from this committee would be premature. I think we're still learning to walk. Fair?
Very fair.
Well, I agree with Mr. Nathan. I think there should be some more marketing by the district of the success and the changes that have been undertaken by this.
Oh,
Less so about the committee and the process, but more so about the outcomes. They have a website, or a Twitter account or social media. These pictures are great stories. We should be pushing this out and celebrating.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at, I'll have this number wrong, but I think it was 35 of 37 projects had been completed in one particular area dealing with the short-term projects. Was that, if that was the right category? That's pretty impressive. That's a highlight that could be taken out.
But aren't we coming up on our annual, aren't we coming up on that, on this first year?
Yeah, we're coming up on our own.
So that's when we should be able to give a specific account, ready or not, so to speak, with those types. And it could be, that's the introduction, and then when we get to the March meeting, maybe the next time, because we'll have our figures in the manner that we might like better. But I think it's at an annualized basis coming up here. It's an excellent time.
I think it would be too much to ask.
Press release rather than just the website.
I don't think it'd be too much to ask for the district, or at least the staff that works with this committee, to draft a report to the board that would be presented to the board by the chairman. And it could be a one-page report. This is where we are.
And then that could in turn be released as our public face of it.
As it stands for the sales tax referendum, not the overall capital program and all the projects, but as it stands within our purview, these are the bullet points of what we believe has been accomplished so far by the district. so that we then could receive that, mull it over, approve it, send it to the board officially.
Can we do that outside of a
Could
meeting?
you bring us something
We'd be,
as a draft to the March meeting?
we'd be happy to do that. And as a matter of fact, we can send it to you ahead of time, so you review it before the March meeting and come in with your feedback related to it.
Yeah, perhaps if it could be sent out ahead of time, that'd
Yes.
be great, well ahead of time, so we have a chance to mull
Yep.
it over. Good.
Well, yes, we'd be happy to do that.
And if you would make sure that in the back blue line it says draft, and
In the watermark, yes. All right, will do.
so that somehow it doesn't end up in the wrong hands as being approved.
We will make sure to do that.
So, something that was just said before that ties into this, I like the one-page concept, but some kind of a link that then gets into the before and after pictures. Because those pictures that you showed us at the very beginning of how horrendous some of these things are that needed to get fixed, that you've already gone public with, show the results. I think it's, pictures do say thousands of things.
Okay. And we have, there were plenty of pictures in the handouts that you have now, too. I just wanted to make sure that you all had seen those as well, because they,
They tell a lot.
yeah, they do.
On the website, is there a before and after section within the website of projects or completions?
No,
Do you have pictures on the website?
not as of yet. We have started collecting them, and we need to put them on the website, that we're not showing those yet.
Because in that one pager, you could then use that one pager to drive people to the
To
website
the website.
and then see the pictures. So that may take you a little bit of time, but that would be a great opportunity to do that.
Okay,
That's
all
why
right.
I've been trying to drive people to the website, so if I was able to.
Yes, okay.
Also, too, Mr. Chair, we talked about, I believe this committee suggested that some sort of signage in front of wherever some of these massive projects are being done at the schools. Your penny tax dollar at work here, as a visual for the community and those going by, that they see the actual.
That's a great idea.
result of-
Somebody drive by a major project site and see your sales tax dollars at work. Guess what you're hearing is toot the district horn a little more. Okay, yes.
Yes, we have.
That is in process, the signs, and I'd like to take it a step further and show a sign in front of every school, because every school will be touched by the referendum dollars. So every parent that drives into that school will see what projects at that school, and that is in process. That was a big conversation we had.
Yes, yes, it is.
Surrounding MMM.
Yes, it is, yes.
And I do want to assure you, there will be no high school XXX either.
Okay.
Wanted to assure you of that. So the conversation that you've been having has been fantastic. I'm wondering if anybody would be willing to capture that in an editorial that we could send out to all of the news outlets. I love the press release idea, but part of the value of this community is the leadership that sits at this table. So beyond a graph, form, press release, I think your names on an editorial would go a long way in this community. And I do think the community is really hungry to hear from you in terms of what your estimation is about how the money has been spent and how we are planning to spend future dollars. So that's a suggestion. I don't even know if I'm in a position to make that suggestion, but given the feedback I've heard, that might be something to consider.
Me personally, I'd like to see that first quarterly report to the board as a draft report before I'm willing to go to the letter to the editor route. That's where I'd be.
I agree with that, and I would love, again, in that letter to be able to say, go to this website and you're going to see the pictures.
Good,
So
thank
that's a
you.
little more work, but I think it'll mean a heck of a lot.
Good, thank you.
You're going to get there anyway, so.
Well said, guys. Is there any more good of the order type?
I have one more question for you. In past meetings, you all have made a motion to approve past expenditures over the past quarter, and then another motion approving planned expenditures in the upcoming quarter. And I didn't know if you were planning on doing that tonight, but that has been past practice at meetings.
I think that'd be worth doing.
Okay, I'm going to go sit down now. Thank you. Happy holidays.
Would someone make that motion? That is, I'm sorry, I missed that one. That's a formality that came up early on that would, in fact, approve the reporting of the projects that have been completed and reported to us, and also approve the discussion of future projects as being within the purview of the sales tax that was
I'll
passed.
make that motion.
Sorry, I'll wait. I'll wait if it's seconded. But I believe she asked for the approval of the expenditures in the past quarter and the expenditures. And I'm not comfortable with the expenditures of the next quarter because we haven't seen any of the expenditures. We can approve the expenditures and the projects for the next quarter, but not the expenditures for the next quarter.
Right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, General, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I second it.
Who's taking the minutes now that Greta went to her meeting? Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
The motion and the second?
I didn't get who made the first motion of the expenditures in the past quarter. Who made the motion?
Expenditures of the past quarter and the
And the projects.
projects for the next quarter.
Next quarter, yeah.
The motion was made by General Dozier, and Alyssa did the second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. And I would have, Mr. Chair, if I can, one more item that we just wanted to make the Sales Tax Committee aware of, and I'm inviting Mr. Frederick Ross, who is our Director of Procurement, up to talk about a huge vendor show that we had today that will pull in many of the contractors that we will be utilizing to help us, complete our projects under the sales tax funds. So, Mr. Ross?
Yes, Frederick Ross, Director of Procurement. Just wanted to let you know about our event that we had today. It was our second annual vendor open house. It was an opportunity for vendors, whether they are new to the district or just doing some business with the district, can come in and spend a little time, learn about the district, and meet with key staff members. Kind of the three main goals were, first, kind of a procurement 101, if you will, of how to do business with the district, making sure they know where all the resources are on our website and when their category may be coming up for bid in the future and what opportunities that they may have. Secondly, that time to meet one-on-one with district staff. We had most of our district departments there, definitely the ones that are involved with this committee, and they were able to set up tables and meet with those different departments, learn kind of the key players there and how that department operates, so they'll be familiar with them when bids come around. And then thirdly, we also had all of our general contractors, or majority of our general contractors that are currently on continuing service contract or doing one of our major schools or major projects, they also had tables there so they could meet, and we kind of call that a matchmaker for those subcontracting opportunities. I think one of the best stories I've heard from the day was from Scott Rickenbacker, our Director of Construction, when he spoke with one of the general contractors, and he said, hey, there was just one trade area that previously I only had one local guy who could do it, one local vendor that could provide it, and I met another one today. So now there's the little competition, and in procurement we feel like if you add more quality vendors, you get more competition, and then you can drive more savings. So that's kind of the things that procurement is kind of doing in the background that's definitely still supporting the sales tax initiative. Just wanted to let you know about that.
How did you make people aware of different things? Invitation?
Yes, definitely. So first of all, we kind of keep a list in procurement. We get calls and emails daily of vendors who want to do business with the district, so we have that list. Secondly, we reached out to, we have access to the state Office of Supplier Diversity, so they have registered vendors of minority status on there.
Where I was going.
Yep. And in addition to that, not done, we also reached out and partnered with NAACP, Florida Gulf Coast Small Business Development Center, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and some of the local business industry associations as well. And just to wrap up, I don't think I gave you the numbers on that. We end up having 101 vendors attend today's event with 36 being minority suppliers. So we definitely call that a success.
Okay.
That's good.
That's good.
All right. Yes.
I think that's great, and I think that at some point, maybe we ask someone from the Regional Economic Research Institute at FGCU to do a study on the impact of the sales tax on this region. There's hundreds of millions of dollars going into our region that are leveraged through our vendors, through jobs, and it can be another message back to the community that these monies are being reinvested, and it's a good investment in our communities.
Yeah. That's a really good idea. What's the name of the fellow that handles the RER?
Chris Wesley is the
Chris
chief
Wesley.
economist there.
Do you know Chris, Dr. Desmore? Chris Wesley?
Not.
Maybe Chris Semino could help you meet Chris Wesley, who does a report that gets emailed to the business community. And if we could get him to tell us what kind of a study he might do as to the economic impact of our sales tax referendum expenditures, that's a huge piece if it's well done.
Okay, all right, wonderful.
Yeah.
And that report's pretty widely read, I think, in the business community. I believe that people actually get it and look through it.
Yeah.
And that report, I'm sorry, again, was called what?
I didn't hear the question.
I said that report was called what? Did you call the name of that report?
RERI, it's the Regional Economic
Research Institute.
Research Institute. Yeah, I think
At
I think
FGCU.
we have that right.
Got it, okay.
FGCU.
Okay, very good.
And one additional thing that we're doing kind of in that area is procurement presented at the last construction advisory committee, and we're looking at some just some changes in the RFQ process. And two areas we're looking at is adding points for local participation and also minority participation. So both of those kind of help that local economy.
Good.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Ross.
Are you going to make the motion?
No, sir. For a motion?
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
I just had a quick, as this first year comes to a close, I wanted to get a quick update, and it can be an email, about terms, about the committee members and their terms. My year is coming up, and it's done. I'm having a great time here. I'd like to stay engaged, so that process needs to be re-brought up. Are we going to go through the same process as how we were appointed? We have to go through a sponsor on the board?
Okay. Yes, according to our board member and residents here. So thank you for pointing that out. We will make sure to get some information together and get it out to each of our committee members so we know how to proceed.
Good.
Last comment, if I may.
Sure does.
I appreciate the transparency and the willingness for you to adapt to what we're asking. And, you know, we're new, you're new in this mix in that regard. So I appreciate the transparency that's being shown. I would encourage you to take these media ideas and have a sense of urgency with them, because it may not be under our control to do it in February or March if the news press or another media outlet wants to know where you are at year one.
Understood.
I would rather be prepared going into that with a little more sense of an urgency, because there is such good news to relate. And I don't want to put them off and say, well, give me a minute, and now I've lost that momentum.
Good. Okay, great. Thank you for that.
I serve on a board in which we talk about that we'd rather get out in front, so we have true rumors rather than false rumors.
No fake news, no fake news.
True rumors.
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Yes.
Nathan said yes. There's a motion for our second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. If I'm a little awkward at chairing a meeting, sorry about that.
I think you did a good job.
Beat Joe by 3 minutes.